Honoured to be first.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so it's a true honor to meet both of you, and absolute love and respect from India.
Thank you.
Thanks a
And
lot.
my first question is for both of you. As actors, what really gets you hooked for a project like this? What makes this show really special for you?
There's so much.
It's a good question. It's always been characters for me, first and foremost.
Oh, it's the storytelling, I think, isn't it? Always.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's what we do. Actors are only successful if they tell a good story that people want to hear.
The writing is incredible, and I knew that even from like the first audition when nothing made sense, because I had like this random scene from what we now know as the VR game world, and I had this beautiful dramatic scene between two actors, and I was like, is this the same show? But they were both really delightful in their own way. And then when I read all the draft scripts to begin with, I was so compelled. Just on paper alone, I was laughing and crying and relating to all the characters. So I think that gets you really excited when the characters are already coming out of the page at you. You're like, wow, I can really dig my teeth into this.
If you don't care about the characters, then you're not going to care what kind of threat they're in and what danger they're in. So I think for me, it's all about characters.
Yeah, it's a story unlike any other, isn't it?
Yeah, true.
It's really like at the heart. It becomes like a thriller. Yeah, as we unfurl, it goes into a very much different sort of genre-bending world that it keeps people asking questions, lets them reevaluate about their lives, and reflection really on humanity as well.
Yeah, it's very similar for me. Like the quality of writing and the character, like what the journey that the character goes on. Because you end up spending sort of certainly on a TV show like a year with that character. So how it's written and the sort of psychological shifts and turns that they go on is huge.
The idea of the micro and the macro of someone making this fateful decision, looking around as they see, put yourselves in the shoes of that character when they see their father brutally murdered and they've lost all hope in humanity. Would you press that button? It's kind of, but the cataclysmic effect that causes and the possible ending of time, it's got incredible scope.
Yeah.
Especially for a show like this where there's so much action and so much science and so much scope.
Wow. And for me, I was very lucky to be familiar with the books prior than I realized that Netflix is going to make it a series. And I was a big fan of the books, so was a big fan of Game of Thrones. And when I heard the names, of course, I want to work with them. But I didn't believe that I could get the role.
Oh.
Yeah. So that was some insecurity.
But she did.
I did.
And for me, what really stands out about Three Body Problem is its meticulous attention to its detail, and while also embracing the fantastical themes. How do you believe maintaining the balance of both worlds is important for the show? Because it's like an incursion of two different genres.
Oh, it's very huge, momentous, sometimes some people would say impossible task that we did not have to deal with. Thankfully, David, Dan, and Alex did an amazing job.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at our show, part of it takes place in China in the 70s, part of it takes place now, and part of it takes place in a virtual reality video game. So the one thing that I not struggled with, but the one thing I was curious about while we were filming it was just how all that was going to stick together.
Yeah.
Because it just felt so different. Whenever we were doing game stuff, and then we'd think about Benedict and Liam doing their scenes, it just felt like they were from a completely different show.
Yeah.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you said the attention to detail.
Yeah.
It's what gives our world a believability.
Yeah.
And attention to detail costs a hell of a lot of money.
Yeah.
And Netflix have been very generous in the budget that they've given, that we can give this story scale and the many layers that's in it. It was very necessary to tell this story properly.
So props to those guys.
Yes. And also the directors.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah,
So they had to really carry out the story and have the clearest vision of the entire scenes and storylines. And me, my heaviest task was to focus on the character work.
And it makes our job easier because they've created a world that we can believe easily as actors.
Yeah.
So it's just more about us doing our own little tiny bit, trusting everybody else to do their bit, and then just knowing that we've got these guys in charge who will make it all fit together.
Yeah.
And you're
I couldn't have said it better, to be honest. I feel like he covered my ass there.
And as fantastical as it is, you know,
Yeah.
the where it's kind of rooted in a certain reality where the science is credible, isn't it? And yet, and also what I found was interesting with the site specific of where we were filming, United Nations, and you know, Bohot Fedowski, the mission control at JPL was involved, and I found that fascinating.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And the next question is, do you agree with the series' moral message that hardest choices requires the strongest will? How do you feel about the sacrifice and the philosophy of morality of the show? Do you agree with that?
I personally... Say it again for me. Let me hear it. Say it again.
That hardest choices requires the strongest wills. And how do you feel about the sacrifices and morality depicted in the show?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I think one of the big messages I think from the show is if we do not work together as a species, as a human race, we're finished. We're absolutely finished. Division of human beings in one country against another, or a group of people, or anything like that. Everybody suffers. The world is in pain.
Yeah.
And that doesn't work.
Actually, I personally do agree with that. I think you really have to have a strong
You will
willpower
sacrifice.
in your life, but that doesn't mean that there is sacrifice involved. Because some people will also say, if I just use more willpower, then I don't have to sacrifice anything or anyone.
But that's the interesting thing about it when it comes to some of the existential threats that we've had recently in real life, whether it's COVID or whether it's the climate crisis. You'd think that when something like that happens that affects the whole world, you think that everybody would start pulling in the same direction, everybody would start agreeing. But in actual fact, it just makes people fight, and it makes people more separate than ever before. And making the ultimate sacrifices for humanity is one thing, but most people don't even want to wear a piece of paper in front of their face in order to save humanity. So it's not that straightforward, and I think our show explores some of that dynamic between people, but ultimately the message is it's better if we all...
And I kind of thought, we were thinking, somebody asked a question about what would you do if an alien ship showed up, and I preferred to think of it from the alien point of view. If if they looked down and had a look at the human race, they'd go, bye bye, guys. I wouldn't have it. It's like coming down to a stupidly bickering family. It's we need to sort ourselves out before we start looking for other people.
I think it's a beautiful message. It's very the books and the series kind of look at humanity as like a singular entity in a way.
But everyone's decisions and responses in the show are so different. That's what I love, is that it's humanity's kind of myriad of responses to this existential whatever.
Yeah.
And it's not just one message, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it begs the question of why do we need this looming threat in order for the world to unite?
Yes.
And let's just unite first.
Yeah.
And literally travel out and come in peace.
For me, it depends the situation.
I've seen
on
the
different
episodes.
It depends on the situation.
Yeah,
But for Yewenji's character, definitely.
Which I think is, something we're lacking in our world. We could be more cohesive.
You're ready to sacrifice everything for humanity.
Well, that's a different question. Maybe for a woman I love. But yeah, maybe. Who knows? I'd have to see. It would depend on a few different factors.
And one of the reasons I was surprised, because it's committed to its seriousness. It doesn't use the excuse of nerds to use any unnecessary self-depreciating jokes or use the fantastical themes for comedic relief. Is that something that resonates with you also?
The comedy part of the series?
Yeah, it's committed to its seriousness.
I feel, yes, it's dark irony, I would say, rather than sweet comedy.
I think what it is to be into science and what it is to be into sci-fi and be what people used to call a nerd, I think that's completely changed. That stigma's completely gone as science fiction and fantasy has come so much into the mainstream. Like people, I was in Game of Thrones and people who'd never been into that kind of thing watch Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Dune's a huge movie.
Yeah.
This is probably going to be a huge show. So
Definitely.
there's not that dividing line anymore. People just like what they like and nobody's defined, put into boxes that easily anymore. So if you're cool, you're cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like when you have this source material like that, that would be kind of hard to to go anywhere
joke
like
about
that.
it.
I think we've already added a lot of levity to,
Yeah.
to the material.
Yeah.
And it's such a universal show, and I think it doesn't talk down to anyone.
Yeah.
And I think there's something for everyone in each different part of it as well, which is cool.
Alex, there is a fascinating line in the show about consciousness continuing across the world. How do you personally see that? Do you like the idea of living alone forever?
Oh, the idea of living forever? No, I don't particularly like that idea because actually I think our mortality is, in a lot of ways, knowing that we don't have an infinite amount of time on this planet is what kind of gives everything value.
Yeah.
Like even us talking in this room right now has more value because we know of our limited time frame. And I think, the West specifically relationship to death is like not very developed. I think it's much more developed in India, which is, by the way, my favorite country in the world.
Yeah.
I've been like 5 times.
Yeah, we have a whole custom and rituals for that.
Yeah. So
It's
Varanasi,
a
going to
whole process.
Varanasi kind of changed my life.
Yeah.
Incredible country. So I think it's an interesting. I think the show kind of explores that as well.
David, John, I'm sorry. That's all right. You have worked closely with David Benioff and D.B. Weiss for a long time.
Yeah.
What do you believe that makes the adaptation so special?
Just in terms of how human it is.
The quality of their writing, their
Yes.
respect for the original material.
One thing that I found when I read the books was the science is very dense and the ideas are very big. But what David and Dan have always done is they make you care about the characters at the center of it, and they find humor within it. They know that even in the most extreme circumstances, people don't really stop saying funny things.
Yeah.
And people don't stop falling in love. And I think that's what it is. It makes people invest in the characters, and then they can imagine what it's like to have that kind of stuff happen to them. And I think that was a leap from the Game of Thrones book to the Game of Thrones TV series as well.
And they got applauded even by the people who adored the novels of Game of Thrones. They went, no, the story is in good hands.
Yes.
Because they are fans. It's not like they're just coming in. They don't need the money at this stage. And it's really important that a story like this is curated and protected. And David, Dan and Alex are the right people to do that, in my opinion.
Books are very fantasy and the characters speak in this very heightened way. But in the show, people were just talking like people are talk right now. And I think that's a real skill in terms of making it accessible and relatable.
What's the one thing you have learned about science or technology for portraying your character? Is there anything inspiring or memorable?
Everything's memorable. It would take me like hours to explain to you because I had 3 days of physics lessons.
Oh,
Yes, with
amazing.
Matthew McKenzie.
Yeah, our consultant, our real life physicist consultant. He's a really
Right.
good guy.
so
Actually,
is there anything that blows your mind? Any fact or anything?
Yeah, I remember arguing with him.
I remember you arguing with him
How is this
too.
possible? How can this be possible?
Yeah. He's explaining our sun as a reflector into the universe. And I was like, no, how is that possible? And he told me like there's this sandwich between the inner part of the sun and the outside of the sun. In the middle part, there was a sandwich that could reflect the waves that hits the sun and magnify them and hit them outside of the space. No! How is it possible?
Meanwhile, I'm coming into the corridor of the production office where they're having that argument, and I'm like, who is that?
Okay. And Benedict, in your opinion, which cast member from the series could be the best or the worst DJ?
Good question. There is only one DJ. Nobody else matters. DJ
Hey,
Obi-Wan.
your social secretary.
Yeah.
At your
Absolutely.
service.
Okay, and the worst?
Probably me. I wouldn't know how to switch it on.
He actually goes on first. He plays the penny whistle,
Yeah,
and then I'm back on.
yeah. That was warm-up act.
And one last question. Describe your characters in 3 words.
Ooh. Thinks he's awesome.
That's actually perfect for him. Yeah, I believe it.
Brilliant, empathetic, and obsessive.
Can you do some more?
Jin is awesome.
Nice.
And what about you?
I can't describe it in 3 words. It's too much.
It's
Okay. Perfectionist. Survivor.
Quietly very heroic.
Oh, lovely.
I've seen that.
What else? Physician.
No.
Single-minded,
Cool.
hawk-like, observe hawk. And what's the third? He's a bit of a badass, really.
A lover.
Oh, hello.
I don't know. Shadowy, enigmatic, driven.
Or a peace lover. Arguable.
arguable. I was fine.
Arguable.
Okay. Thank you both of you, and thank you for having me.
Oh,
This
thank
was a
you for
great
coming.
opportunity.
Thanks so much. Such a
Yeah.
pleasure to meet you.
Oh,
It was
thank
an amazing
you.
experience. This is my first junket, and
Thank you
giving me
very
this
much. Well
opportunity.
done, your first.
It was a great experience.
Dude, you nailed it. It
Mate,
was brilliant.
genuinely,
Yeah,
genuinely, we wouldn't say this. We'd never been asked any of those questions.
yeah they,
Oh,
were,
seriously?
they were
Mate,
fantastic.
We've been doing this now for 2 weeks and we've never been asked those questions. You've no idea how nice it is.